What's up guys, Coach Az here, and today we're back again with another Strikers Breakdown. In this series we take a look at some of my favorite fighters and break down some of their techniques and tactics that they use in their striking game. And today it's my pleasure to bring to you a fellow Englishman. We're going to be looking at Darren the Gorilla Till. At the time of filming this, Till is getting ready to fight Jared Cannonier in the UFC, so I wanted to get this video out before the fight goes down because I like to put these things out, win or lose. I think Darren brings a lot of interesting things to the striking table and I think it's worth us discussing. Alright, so let's jump straight into it. Let's talk a little bit about his style and his approach, and then we'll get into more of the specifics as we go through the video. Darren Till is primarily a Muay Thai fighter in regards to his striking. However, he has some very interesting adaptations and hybrid approaches which we're going to discuss when we start with stance and guard. Darren fights out of a southpaw stance. This means that he's right leg forward, so his power techniques come off of his left side. This is extremely advantageous in Muay Thai especially because of the ability to throw roundhouse kicks and all your power shots down on that inside. So if you're fighting someone who's orthodox, which means that they are left, their body and their leg is very exposed to you, and those big powerful roundhouse kicks that we associate with Muay Thai are really readily available for you to throw. What's interesting about Darren is although I would say his style is Muay Thai, his stance is unusually wide for the style. Now, in going through and watching a lot of his earlier fights, I think this is something that he has adapted slightly over time to deal with the wrestling that comes in MMA. That wider base that Darren takes allows him to better shuffle forward and backwards and to have a lower center of gravity when people attempt to shoot on him. The reason this wide stance is unusual for Muay Thai is because that lead leg becomes vulnerable, in particular to leg kicks. The more upright stance of Muay Thai, where you're more light on the front foot, means it's a lot easier to lift it and check kicks that are incoming. But Darren seems to believe that this is a necessary evil in order to implement his game plan in the sport of MMA. When talking about Darren's guard, this is also something that I believe has evolved through his journey. Go back to his early debut in the UFC and he's got a pretty typical Muay Thai guard. Relatively high hands, elbows in tight, very conscious of protecting his head and dealing with incoming kicks. But as his fight career has progressed, I've found especially his lead arm goes a lot lower now, and he's using it far more to probe, measure and judge distance. A great way I've heard Darren Till described is as an eco fighter, and by that it means he uses very little energy when it comes to movement and throwing techniques, in the sense that there's nothing unnecessary, there's nothing extra. He moves as much as he needs to move, whether that be forward or backwards, and he only seems to throw what he believes is going to land. He doesn't put out an awful lot of fakes and feelers in the conventional sense of flicking his hip or rotating his shoulder, but he does plenty of things with level changes and with that lead arm that we're going to talk about when we get to his strikes. One of the things I love most about Darren's movement is his level changes. He likes to lower and raise his head and lower and raise his lead arm as he pushes in and out of range. This makes it really difficult for his opponent to get a read on him. It also makes it really hard to know when the attack and what direction the attack is coming from. This up and down head movement combined with the long Muay Thai guard that's reaching, probing and measuring makes it great to set up the power shots off of the back arm that Darren loves to utilize. Alright, let's talk a little bit about his striking, and what I want to start with is the way Darren closes distance in order to land his left cross. We've spoke a lot about this channel on the importance of setting things up, of going in behind techniques and fakes in order to close the distance. Darren often can just throw that all to the side. Darren, like I said, as an eco fighter, he does only what he feels is super necessary. So more often than not, you will just see Darren shuffle into distance, measure with his lead hand and shoot his back arm straight down the center. This is an ever-present theme in all his fights where he just steps into range and shoots that back arm straight down the pipe. It goes back to that old adage of basics win fights. He sticks to fundamental techniques, nothing overly complicated, gets inside and makes it work. Now, as well as using this tactic to set up for his cross, he uses it to set up all kinds of power punches off the rear hand, whether that be a conventional rear arm hook, an overhand, or an uppercut straight up the middle, especially on those fighters that are trying to step in and counter. Unless Till feels like he's got the finish, it's unusual to see him throw more than 2 shots at a time. Maybe a 1-2 or one with the jab and then any of those rear arm punches to follow up. He's far more on the sniper approach as opposed to being the machine gun that's throwing a lot of volume at his opponent. Now, one of my absolute favorite strikes of Darren is his step in rear elbow strike. He has caught countless people with this and it's such a devastating shot. Again, the same principles that we've used so far to step in with the jab or step in just with that lead long guard and throw the backhand, but Darren just takes that extra step in and shoots that tight elbow down through the back arm. Devastatingly powerful, and he's dropped a lot of opponents with this exact strike. Fighters expect the fist. Fighters expect the cross, especially with Darren where he's throwing it again and again. So more often than not, he seems to be able to catch them off guard when they're expecting something to come straight down the middle and that elbow comes up and around the guard. Okay, let's talk a little bit about Darren's kicking game. Darren's kicking game is surprisingly simple. Like I said earlier about the open stance situation, where Darren fights in a southpaw stance and is more often than not going to be dealing with those in orthodox, this means that 2 particular targets are always very exposed to him. It's the inside lead leg and it's the inside body kick, in particular on an orthodox fighter, the liver shot on the right hand side of the body. So fundamentally speaking, most of the time you'll see Darren throwing one of 2 kicks, the leg kick or coming up and into the body to shoot that roundhouse straight up. And again, it's very economical. There's not a whole lot attached to it. He just shoots that leg hard into the body or hard into the leg. He's got great conditioning, and in that sense, even if he's hitting the guard, he's wearing on the arms of his opponent. Now, if Darren is fighting a fellow southpaw, which means they're in a closed stance, this opens them up to the leg kick on the outside thigh. So again, he's throwing that bat leg roundhouse kick, but this time he's now attacking that thigh. Now, this isn't to say that Darren doesn't have other kicks in his arsenal. I think he just understands that in MMA, you're very vulnerable if you start throwing a whole lot of variety. So he keeps it to stuff that he knows he can throw quickly and effectively. You will occasionally see him throwing his lead leg, in particular to that outside thigh on an orthodox opponent. Now, normally at this point, I'd like to talk about some of his combinations, but as I've discussed earlier, he tends to just throw 2-shot combinations, and when he throws his kicks, he often just throws them on their own. So what we will discuss is a little bit of his clinch game. He doesn't use it as often as you'd think, and actually he uses a lot of defensive wrestling to break away and fight at range. However, in a few occasions he does get in on the clinch, and he's very happy to throw knees up through the middle, and in particular, again with that rear elbow, working it on the break. Pulling his opponent's guards down, leaving an opening to the head, creating some space so he can generate power, and driving that elbow onto the outside of his opponent's face. The clinch is obviously a really important and powerful part of Muay Thai, and it translates really well to the clinch game within MMA, in particular against wrestlers that are trying to take you down. If you can pull them up to you and get them engaged in a Muay Thai clinch, although you might not be the better wrestler or grappler, you can still have the advantage in that specific scenario. Now, of course, I'd be remiss if I didn't also mention his bravado. Darren loves to tell his opponents that their shots don't hurt. He likes to put his hands up asking what is that, especially if he makes someone miss. He's going to try to make you feel foolish. Darren enjoys the mind games. He also enjoys the banter. I think this is also part of what helps to keep him calm in a fight and keep him relaxed and not to take anything too seriously, so that he can be in that flow state and his techniques can just come as and when he needs them. So there we have it, guys. That's the Darren Till Strikers breakdown. Let us know who you want me to break down on the next video. Hit like if you haven't done already. Please subscribe to the channel. We got new videos coming every week, and I will see you on the next one.